I'm Annelies.
And I'm Jan Willink, and we bought the property in 1979 with the idea of having a bit of water and a lovely hill, Bajiniji, which is a 400 million year old extinct volcano, but bare paddocks, only Patterson skurs, and a few old trees and a few dead trees. Initially we were interested in planting and making it green, but without much knowledge of what is ideal for this particular area, and with the European knowledge of certain trees that would work well, like poplars, oak trees, and that has since then been superseded by native eucalypts, native plants, and eventually indigenous native plants in the various areas. But we are left with some of the oak trees. We certainly haven't allowed the poplars to continue to grow. So the poplars have all gone, but the oak trees are still here.
So the challenge was getting those trees to grow. And in those times, just finding those trees to buy was already quite a challenge, because people were not into tubes yet. So we literally bought trees in pots, and we soon discovered that became a very expensive exercise. So we then went further afield. We would go to an RCL in Melbourne to get tube stock from there, and then later Caramar came in, and then Jan started to propagate his own from seeds and from cuttings.
We were running sheep with the idea of getting an income, but at the same time making them useful for our purposes, and that is creating an environment that was important for us and not the income itself. So we started planting trees for the sheep, and they were honey locusts and other trees that they could live on, as well as indigenous native trees that belong to the property itself.
What really appealed to us when we first bought this property at Tabletop, basically three things. It was the hill, it was the water that should have come first, and a few beautiful trees, and one in particular, a fallen tree that had created its own forest almost, and the view onto Tabletop Mountain. So that makes it four. And the potential, of course, because we realized that ultimately we would want to live here, but we needed some green around us. So that's when we started with the planting program.
Behind us is water, as you can see, and an island a distance away, which is only an island when Lake Hume is 90%, so that we can travel to that island most of the time, except when the lake is 100% full. What we see at the moment is that the lake is 95% full, so that you can only get to the island by canoeing. We put in a small island, a little island, and a deeper, what should I say, a pond, as it were, and by utilizing the dug up material, we created a road which was essential for sheep to come across from one side to the other, because when the weir is 100% full, that's underwater. So by doing that, that allowed us to manage the sheep more effectively. And that's how the little island came in, which we now have called Mini-Niji instead of Bajiniji.
Really, the wildlife that's come as a result of all the planting, that is such an incredible bonus.
The bird life has, since we've started here, has exponentially increased in such a phenomenal way that we can now claim that we have at least 150 bird species. That includes the water birds as well. And certainly as the Weir recedes, the water birds have their own wetlands, which varies between 1.5 meters to 3 meters deep. And that's indeed what water birds like to have. Inland, we've seen so many birds coming in now, from babblers that we've never seen before, to little scrub wrens that are an absolute delight, and they need small shrubs, and it's the stimulation to get the small shrubs in to allow the birds to come into our existence, as it were, that has made us propagate more. And it's a difficult thing. It's easy enough to propagate eucalypts and trees. It's easy enough to plant them, but it's not so easy to get in the little shrubs, the little herbs, the chocolate lilies, ground cover, to make things attractive for not us, but also for the wildlife.
To keep on doing more of the same is what I hope we'll be able to do, because we get so much joy out of it, the activity itself, and then the results. That's incentive enough. And of course there's always now regular maintenance, so that keeps us going. And we find that when we travel, the best time is when we get back home. We're just so content to be here, so that's my plan for the future, is to stay here as long as we possibly can and keep doing what we're doing.
Yep. My plan is to propagate more of the difficult type of herbs, which is really not easy at all. It's, once again, it's easy to put in the trees, but it's not so easy to get the ground cover. And that activity of small herbal plants, that propagation is so difficult that stimulates me to keep on going. And I often say, well, as you get older, you get smaller and closer to the ground, as it were, and that's where the herbs come into it.
What's been wonderful for us is that our son and his family decided to come and live next door, and we now have grandchildren going to Tabletop Primary School, which is a lovely little school nearby, something we never anticipated, so we delight in that.
We feel very strongly that the only heritage that really Australia has is the bush itself. We don't, like the Europeans, have big buildings, important churches and various other things. We have new buildings, but the heritage lies in the bush. And this is the sort of thing that I want to promote as much as possible. And I'm sometimes heartbroken when you see people bulldozing their very important bush, which is so unique, and yet it's being allowed more and more. And when you hear that, when you see that happening, you despair. And we get all our joy from going to national parks and enjoying that and trying to imitate that and mimic that by planting as many of what you see in national parks. That's my stimulation.
So that's what the property is about, is try to get some of the Australian bush happening.